The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is losing a record number of its membership.
As I was fixing breakfast and uploading the second half of this video, I remembered another one. Like I said, there's lots of stuff that I'm probably forgetting, and like I say in the video, there's lots of stuff that you guys didn't hear in the news, but if you were following me on my website, you would have known about them, or channel on YouTube, and I did have a website too. The Book of Mormon was in jeopardy of getting banned in Utah because of somebody filing a complaint about this porn law to ban the Bible, which did get banned according to the laws as written in Daviess County, was it? The Council of Mormons had to agree to ban the Bible because of the person's purposeful mockery of the law to show that it was stupid. And when the Book of Mormon got threatened, that's when they backed off and allowed the Bible back in, and pursued other avenues to threaten people about the danger, evils, and deaths of porn. So I'll put this at the beginning. Travis Wayne Goodsell. Over the years here in this latter days, since 2017, there have been controversies, not just during the years, but also right before conference. And for this year, so far we have Ballard, who's the most news-covered controversy right before conference. As CNN and the SEC were among the bigger stories earlier after the April conference. What is disturbing is that there's a whole long list of controversies, and I'm going to list them. But before I do, why are Mormons in denial? That's the disturbing part, is that these controversies involve abusive criminal behavior by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And, oh, that's another one. And Mormons not only are in denial, but in many cases are committing crimes to help defend the church, to attack the people who are whistleblowing on the church. Now, Mormons know about Helaman chapter 6, right? Because Mormons claim they've read the Book of Mormon, they've pondered over it, and had a spiritual feeling that it's literal history true about Jesus of the Roman period time, which is what Constantine created. See, there are those controversies, but they don't make the headlines because YouTube has been ordered by the church to silence my voice. I have been exposing the biggest of the controversies, and if you're new and you're like, I haven't heard about it, exactly. But it's supposed to inform Mormons that they're in the great and abominable church. This isn't a true church. You don't do these kinds of things and be true. See, Mormons can accept that, yeah, the Catholic Church was sex trafficking little boys in Pennsylvania because they're the great and abominable church. Sure, Warren Jeffs was child bride marriaging off, and even got one himself. Of course, because they're the great and abominable church Antichrist core whores. But Mormons refuse to accept that their church is also busted. And thus not true. That is disturbing. So, let's go over them. These are what have only been exposed, so thus I'm not included. Oh, right, we probably should put in the prophecy. The prophecies of all Scripture indicate that the actual Christ of Mormons is going to sue the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the great and abominable church, to try to set the Mormons free. And of course they'll say no, and it won't make the news. But all these others have made the news, are more popular. And so this is supposed to be a testimonial to Mormons that this church isn't true, that their Christ is a fraud, that they're supposed to be looking for a Mormon who's suing the church to try to save them. And Mormons just would rather murder him than save themselves. That's disturbing, Mormons. Okay, now let's go on to the list. So we'll just read from the top to the bottom. They're not going to be in order. The Ballard thing. He is running a non-profit to try to save children from slavery, and includes sex slavery too, I guess. He's claiming that the Church of Jesus Christ has supported him, and our Elder Ballard, I guess he's President Ballard of the 12, came out and denied it. Said, I don't know this guy. I haven't taken pictures with him. I have no idea who he is. Never met him before. And Ballard got caught, or President Ballard got caught in a lie by Fox 13 News Utah that found that the website that the church gave support to Ballard for was taken down. And so the church has gotten busted on that. And I saw in last night's news that even Cox, Governor Cox, Mormon, is now concerned about his own church. But he himself has been compromised by the church, so he's not as innocent as he thinks he is. He's just pretending to be concerned. Because when you commit crimes on behalf of the church, you become guilty of crimes. This is a no-brainer, and yet governors and government leaders have been compromised here. Nelson's daughter, that made the news. And then after the Supreme Court of Utah had it dismissed, covered up and hidden, then the news, the past year has been putting out a call for anybody who has been victims of this similar thing, in which back in the 80s into the 90s, and it's apparently been going on longer than that, they're wanting to know about ritualistic child sex abuse that has been going on here in Utah. And yes, President Nelson's daughter was one such person who were involved in that kind of thing. And the Utah Supreme Court had it dismissed so that it could not be dealt with in the courts. So the 6 victims were denied petitioning for redress of grievances. And the church was protected. There's been international complaints, one of which was Australia. The press investigated the church in Australia and found that the church was violating their financial laws for Australia, which are different than the United States of America. And they exposed that the church not only have LLC corporations to launder money that is received as donations and tithing. Tithing is not a donation. And so yes, the whistleblower is in here too. But that the church also is laundering money into offshore bank accounts that can't be traced unless the government finds out about it, and they can find them. But the government has to actually pursue the church. That church has compromised the government. Canada, equal to Australia, has found that the church is violating Canada's tax laws or financial laws, in which the church has been exposed taking the tithing from Canada and laundering it through BYU to then launder it into the church's big pool, whether it's Ensign Peak Advisors or other thing. It's unclear. The church says that they can do whatever they want with the money. But because it's being laundered, there's the crime. The SEC, earlier this year, the Stock Exchange Commission finally realized that the church has been committing crimes with their tithing only by not reporting the money. That is a crime, and the punishment in their laws is that they need to fine people $5 million for violations of the SEC. They have experienced, educated, licensed people who are supposed to know the law about the stock exchange. People can lose their jobs if they violate the law. That's why they get their job. They know the law. And yet the church hired people who purposely were ordered to violate the law, as the church came out with statements and says that we're going to continue to do what we want. We're a religion. Back off. No, you have to follow the laws of the land. And so that's been another part as we get down to it here with LGBTQ. Vice News exposed the church for their hotline. It's supposed to protect victims of abuse, but instead it's being used to protect the church from legal liability by victims of abuse. And of course the church came out and denied that that's what's going on, despite all the evidence to the contrary. When you deny the truth, you're guilty. Getty versus COP. Kay Birmingham, lawyer, Mormon, former Mormon, who published one book, sued the church on behalf of Getty, who lives out in, I think, North Carolina. And her complaint was that she had lived her whole life, and now the church came out with gospel topics essays and claimed that they've been lying to Mormons all their life. And so Getty is concerned. She had devoted her life because of what the church had led her to believe was true. And now she finds out that it wasn't true. And she's done what with her life? Because of what the church had lied to her about. And so that was her claim, and that was a class action, and obviously it's been dismissed in the federal court of Mormon compromised justices. And I know all about that. But you don't, because it was not made news. England. England also has problems with the church concerning tithing, and force the church to disclose their financial statements for England every year. And so that's something that I don't know why others aren't picking up on this to report the financials of England, at least, like we do for tithing, thanks to the whistleblower. But that's something that happened. Also, England now requires background checks for church leadership. Can you guess why? Sex. Sex. And so, yes, this has also been an issue with Virginia, I think it is, or West Virginia. One of the Virginias, I think, in which a guy who was a known sex offender was made a priesthood leader of some kind, whether it was bishop or other elders quorum president or whatever. And it was found out that he was on the sex offender registry. And now people are complaining, how did the church let this go? Putting sex offenders in leadership positions. And so that state has required that the church do background checks. Gotta follow the laws of the land. There's no excuses. The girls' camps. It didn't really make the news, but she did a website on us. And it's disturbing. And so I'm adding it in. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is purposely poisoning girls' camps. So this year, when they were advertising about go to girls' camp, the water problem has not been solved. COVID shut that case down. And then there have been other controversies with the water in Utah, as there are certain cities here that are having chlorine problems that are way too high, and yet we are finding out that the government has established laws in which an acceptable amount of chlorine is permitted, and it's under the permitted amount, and yet people are dying along with their pets and getting sick. You know you're lying when. And so, yeah, LGBTQ. Multiple fronts on this one. The church has been anti-gay. They've got a homophobia big time. They're a religion. They're already protected in the First Amendment. If LGBTQ want to be sealed in the temple, they can't. That's already established in the religion. Nobody can tell the church what to do or how to run their religion. However, the church has gone on the offensive to make problems. And this is where the problem comes in. And it goes back to the California amendment, Prop 8, to allow gay marriage. And the church boldly tampered with it to bypass the laws. And they got sort of a slap on the wrist, I think. I don't think they actually paid a fine on that one. I'm not sure. But there were people who were making documentaries of that scandal that the church was involved in. And the church, since that time, keep coming out and declaring they hate gays. Hate. And they use God to justify it. God says you're evil. You've got to change. And the church has been doing, with their family services and at BYU, conversion therapy to torture those who are gay. It was finally lifted in 2021. Finally lifted. It's been going on for decades. And finally got exposed and stopped in 2021. But the church came out, tried to suggest to the legislator, let's bring it back. Because the church is involved with psychology, who are the ones who flip the switch on the gays. Psychology is evil. And this has also been a scandal that I didn't have written down. Psychologists for the church are committing sex crimes and murder. Psychology is not scientific. They claim they are. They're lying. They're not. And as a result, they are causing much damage, not just in the state of Utah, but anywhere where they are allowed a foothold. As I see it on NCIS, psychologists got a foothold in the minds of the scriptwriters, and they're ruining the show. And so, yes, the latest one is this year that's been going on with the murder and the problems with the psychologist. And so, yeah, when Natasha Helfer, also part of this for psychology, she came out and said that science in the medical profession, not psychology is not medical. That's one of their lies. The medical profession already knows that masturbation is not harmful. Pornography, not harmful. And so the church excommunicated her and fired her. And then went on a post-push to prove they're right, getting psychologists who will say what the church wants to say, that masturbation is harmful to children. That pornography is harmful, at least to children. No, if it's not harmful to adults, it's not harmful to children. We need to teach our children proper sex ed, and the church won't do that. And they force the government of Utah, especially, to not teach sex ed in the classrooms. How are the children going to know if we're telling them to deny their scientific natures? It's like telling a person eating is a sin. If you eat anything, you put anything in your mouth, You are a follower of Lucifer, and you need to repent and refuse to eat. What's going to happen if you refuse to eat? You're going to die. No, it's not as extreme. If you look at porn, you're going to die. Yeah, that is exactly what Holland said. Compared it to COVID. So others with LGBTQ, the Respect for Marriage Act was not going to pass. There are too many haters in Congress. Plus, LGBTQ, you're already protected in the 14th Amendment, Section 1. You are citizens, and therefore are to be given equal protection in the law. Already in the Constitution. We don't need extra laws, because those extra laws discriminate against other people who are equally protected under the 14th Amendment, Section 1. But nonetheless, the Church of Jesus Christ used this to weaponize it. It's now the Disrespect for Marriage Act, because the church put in their exemption clause amendment, in which the church doesn't have to obey the laws of the land, because they're a religion. And this leads to bigger problems that the church is setting up for, in case the day that shall burn as an oven doesn't happen. That's why they're buying up land. If the church can become exempt from following the laws of the land, and they own the land, they can be exempt from following the laws of the land on their land. Thus, they're buying up the land. And then they had to let China out from buying the land of Utah, so that the church only can buy up the land. China's been trying to do that for us. They're up to something. They know what's coming too. COVID. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints failed to prophesy of the prophesied creeping death. But Nelson did know about it in advance. He called China in January and said, "Anything we can do for you?" Yeah, there was a business deal arrangement going on. It was not to protect people. I hope I don't need to close my windows. Got some rain falling, I hear. And Nelson purposely, I'm going to have to stop the video and do it. Alright. It's raining again. My heart is losing a friend. Nelson knew of the danger of COVID in advance, before it hit America big time, and purposely did not prepare and warn Mormons of the danger. Okay? Then it hit. Governor Herbert, in advance of COVID coming, had set up a task force to deal with it when it hit Utah. This was before the cruise ship with the Mormon who lived in Utah would be sent to the wrong hospital. It's because you did not hear in the news what happened behind the scenes. And so that task force was told to stand down because somebody sued the church, served them with papers. And so they were using COVID as a weapon. And so the April conference comes around, and Nelson, over the pulpit of conference, threatens the governor of Utah to open up the state, telling all the other county mayors and such to open up their cities and counties and etc. He's making the threat at conference. He knew the danger in advance, did not warn the Mormons, and then when it canceled conference, he blamed the government leaders and threatened them to open up the government again, get businesses back to work. And we hadn't even hit the second wave that would be even bigger for the October conference. Nelson comes out at Thanksgiving. The healing power of gratitude. YouTube lets it slide. And then the church would go on to profit off of our misery, suffering, and death through the stock market. Nelson worked for Ensign Peak Advisors, an LLC company, for tithing money. See, tithing paid by members to the church, and it goes into a bank account. The church came out with a response to the whistleblower and confessed we do the same pattern for every source of income. And the SEC is only going after tithing. And so what we now know is the church's method of finances is that a source of income goes into a bank. The church takes a portion, puts it into an LLC company. That LLC company refuses to follow tax laws. And then they take some of it and invest it into the stock market, and the money also gains interest as nothing is used for expenditures. And the church apparently is able to use that to launder money into other accounts that need to be bailed out. Or if there's a project, they funnel the money into that one account to handle the project. City Creek Mall. The church claims they can do that. No, they can't. It's called money laundering. And then what we have found from Australia with the offshore bank accounts is that the church, from the bank account, does not use all of the money for what's intended to be used for. So there's a lot of extra money in the account, but they don't keep it in the account. They take that extra funding that is not used and launder it into an offshore bank account to hide it, cover it up. And so that's the church's procedures for money laundering in the church. And the church has in their incorporation, articles of incorporation, that when the church closes up shop for October conference, that money is to be designated to a special fund by their choosing. And then they claim to be given to charities of their choosing, which is laundering, but that's going to be minimal. The bulk of the money is going to be laundered into a special account, and they can claim that it's the president of the church. That's what they got planned. In the Articles of Incorporation, they're already planning to destroy the church. This was 1923, guys. I've done the videos. And this is the day that shall burn as an oven. This is it. Today, Friday, 22nd. This is it. The bicentennial day that Joseph warned you about, of the great and abominable church who's going to do this to you. You chose not to listen or believe your own founder because you put on Jesus goggles. The Boy Scouts. Yeah, this has been going on for decades. The church had a business deal with the Boy Scouts of America, and were the major supplier of Boy Scouts, and thus were the major supplier of scout leaders, and thus were the major supplier of money. The leaders in Utah and Arizona specifically were raping the Boy Scouts. Over 3,000 were involved in the lawsuit, class action. And the church wanted to bail. They didn't want to be held responsible and pay the damages. And so they've had their lawyers tamper with it to prevent the church from paying. And the church bailed on the Boy Scouts. We're no longer a part of the Boy Scouts. I myself became an Eagle Scout, Southern California. I'm safe. But the church has started their own new program now, as they do youth devotionals in replace of the Boy Scouts, and thus are recruiting girls into the same first strength of the youth. And there's problems because the church is setting up for child bride polygamy in the millennium. Remember, day that shall burn as an oven. Millennium. This is what the tithing is being used for, because I exposed it. That's why I didn't talk about Russia, and the Ukraine war, and the cyber terrorism, and the overthrow of the 2016 election, and the controversy with the 2020 election, and January 6th, and. There's lots of stuff that could be added to this list, but these are the ones that made the news. Protect LDS children. A bishop was upset that bishops were allowed to ask sexually graphic questions in their worthiness interview of children. And so he recommended to the prophets that a list of questions be required to be asked by bishops. Nothing else, nothing less. Similar to adults, we have a list of questions that we have to answer in order to be worthy to go into the temple. And number 10 is tithing. We are worthy if we pay up. Which, again, is a controversy because they're threatening us. It's fire insurance. We'll be protected if we pay a full tithe from the day that shall burn as an oven. That's a crime. 80 million years for each count And it's actually higher than that because there's more than 16 million members that the church has been threatening. And so the church, in response to his request, excommunicated him. Bleep you. We'll do what we want. If we want to get sexually graphic with children, we're going to do it. And so he started an organization, Protect LDS Children. Got a lot of attention, got a lot of press coverage, and forced the church to make the list for bishops to read. Huntsman, James Huntsman, upset that the church lied to us, that Joseph Smith didn't translate directly from the plates, that he used a rock and a hat. This comes from Martin Harris. It does not come from Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith is not a composer of the Book of Mormon. He had nothing to do with the composition of the Book of Mormon. But you don't listen to me. And so instead you believe the lie. That was being covered up by the lies of the church. And so James Huntsman, hearing about Nielsen and his whistleblowing of the church, Ensign Peak Advisors, is now upset that his tithing money is being laundered and used for City Creek Mall and such. And so sues in Southern California, which is what Kay Birmingham should have done. She should have gone out to North Carolina to sue the church. She would have had better luck. But James Huntsman makes the one big major blunder that cost him his case. He said tithing was a donation. So, CNN. Yeah, I didn't mention CNN with the whistleblower. CNN this year interviewed him and covered the story, or not CNN, CBS, but 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes did a whole episode on it, and interviewed him and interviewed the presiding bishop and exposed the church. Big exposure. Church got busted by 60 Minutes. But this is what Mormons do. They go silent and hope it goes away. Then people forget. We don't forget. I don't understand Mormons. Everybody still knows. That's why when you go out on your missions, people use the news stories. Oh, you're raping little girls. Oh, you're financially corrupt. They remember. They may not remember accurately, but they remember. Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. They were pre-Latter Days, but they were part of the pre-show for the Latter Days. The tetrad occurred in 2014-2015, and Chad Daybell had a near-death experience in which he believed he saw Jesus and talked to him, and Jesus told him that the second coming is coming and he needed to prepare for the coming of Jesus. And so he wrote books about it and did lectures and tours, and Lori Vallow found out about it, and she embraced it. Her spiritual witness said it's true, and so she made a way to communicate with him and share her shared bonding interest in his work, and he fell for her, and they were having an affair, And then they decided that they were meant to be together and to fulfill God's plan in preparation for his second coming, and that she's a goddess, and that they have supernatural powers to destroy anybody who gets in their way. And so their spouses got murdered, and family got murdered, and children were claimed to be zombies, and bodies were chopped up and buried in the backyard in Rexburg. And so now the court case has already convicted Lori Vallow, and we're still waiting on Chad, and so forth. So no Jesus to protect them and save them, and they're no longer able to prepare for Jesus' coming. So yeah, after the murder of the kids, they fled to Hawaii for their honeymoon, which the receipts were on Amazon. Dumb. Porn. Because of Natasha Helfer, the church has been pushing the evils and dangers to life, liberty, and property of porn. They have to push their agenda. It has to be true. The church's life depends on it. It's for the children. And so they got the laws of Utah to make a law to spy and make a blacklist of any adult looking on a website, trying to force these sites to report those who are looking at it in Utah. For what purpose? Well, the COVID thing that I forgot to add. The airports were shut down with the COVID shutdown. Nelson threatened Governor Herbert to open up the state again. And so Governor Herbert, among other MAGA governors, were pushing to open up the airports again, to deny the reality of COVID. And this resulted in a number of airport directors saying, no, we are going to protect the people. We will not open up our airports. And such was the case with Utah's airport director. And so, the week when Governor Herbert ordered him to open up and he refused, there was an anonymous tip through Microsoft to the federal government that he had 10,000, 100,000, I don't know how many thousands of downloaded child porn pics on his computer at home. They raided his home, locked him up. We've never heard from him since. He has not had due process of law. Okay? The church uses porn as a weapon to prove they're true about the dangers of porn. Thus Ballard, sexually assault accused after exposing the church. This is a common tactic of the church. George P. Lee, Native Indian in the church, 70? Yeah, after the church excommunicated him because he wanted the church to do more to help the Indians blossom as a rose, according to prophecy, church said, hell no, they need to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. And so he was excommunicated because he could not toe the party line. And then after that, sexual assault allegations or porn or something. It's what the church does. Russia does it too. They use honey pots, as they're called. Get a knock on your door, and there's cameras all over the place to expose you. and then provide P-tapes. And so, because of the law that was passed by Utah, and it still needed to be approved, or it still needed to be implemented on the day that it was supposed to be implemented, Pornhub comes out and says, because of the abuse of the Utah legislature, this unjust, unconstitutional law, which it is, we are forbidding Utahns from viewing Pornhub. And I still haven't checked to do research for you. And nobody else watches Pornhub either, I guess. Or, well, no, you can tell me. If you go to it and it's still blocked in Utah, let me know. Because I apparently keep forgetting. And that made national news. That Utah and their new porn law had Pornhub cancel Pornhub in Utah. Because Pornhub did not want to participate in the blacklist of the government of Utah. And this also has to do with LGBTQ, but it didn't really make the news as the warning that it should. LGBTQIAPO+. Utah has allowed you to change, I think, even your driver's licenses, if not your birth certificates, that you are what you want to be. This was what Nazi Germany did to the Jews and gays right before Hitler took over. This is a blatant repeat of history, and you should be scared to death that Utah has allowed you to do this. You are being identified prior to the church after the day that shall burn as an oven, when they get their kingdom. You know the church has been involved in conversion therapy. You know the church hates you. You should be aware it's a trap. So, yeah, but the Texas judge had canceled the Church of Utah from proceeding with implementing their anti-porn blacklisting. And so, yes, I'm kind of wondering if Pornhub has lifted it because of the Texas judge or not. Maybe the Pornhub is waiting to see if it escalates to the Supreme Court. I don't know. But, yeah. Yeah, I talked about Virginia. Yeah, rapes by bishops and by primary presidents. That has been an issue in the news, and that's why the hotline was created, to protect the church. And so that's interconnected there. There was one bishop down in South who was also a former police officer who was sex trafficking women, claiming when he got caught that he was trying to help the girls. Sort of like Rudy Giuliani when he's caught on camera for the movie. He's helping her. He got caught with his hand down his pants. He's helping her, huh? And so, yeah, too many of this in Utah. That's why the church created the hotline. Arizona. There's a Mormon. After the church canceled their adoption agency, he started up an adoption agency and used as his clients the women from his Manila mission. He would traffic them to the United States, house them in deplorable conditions in Arizona and in West Valley here in Utah. and got caught. He was forcing these women to give up their babies so that they could be adopted. This is exactly what the church was doing. When the church got caught and stopped their adoption agency, they went to family services for psychologists to threaten women, little girls, to give up their babies for adoption. That abortion is evil and wrong. And so thus the church overthrew Roe v. Wade. That's what you didn't know. You heard about Roe v. Wade, but what you didn't hear is what I exposed, because the church is involved in the Council for National Policy, who were the ones directly involved. The church, directly involved through the Council for National Policy, overthrew Roe v. Wade. And so yes, there are lots of others, many of which did not make the news. And as you can see, there are those that are in the news, but you don't know that the church is directly connected. This is why in 2017 I realized I needed to document everything and put the pieces of the puzzle together as we went along, year after year after year. This has been a long latter days, and I suffered for it because you did not hear about what I exposed. So, controversy for conference. So, heads up if anything else pops up.